Welcome to the press conference following the informal ministerial meeting on competitiveness and space in the EU, which we've had here in Seville. We're going to hear from the Minister for Science and Innovation, Morant, and Thierry Breton, European Commissioner for the Internal Market and Services. They're going to tell you about the meeting's conclusions. After they've spoken, there'll be questions. Please, when you take the floor, tell us your name and who you work for before you ask your question. I'd also remind you that the questions you ask have to be linked to the topic of the meeting. I give the floor to the Minister first. Thank you very much and good morning, everyone. We've just finished the informal meeting of ministers competent for space in the EU. As you just heard, and as I said today, the aim of this meeting is very clear: improving the life of citizens using space to do that. Now, for the EU and its member states, it's necessary to incentivise and develop space systems to develop and strengthen the EU's strategic autonomy. Perhaps I could give you 3 examples to illustrate the EU's position in this area. Firstly, we have the Galileo system, which provides GPS systems and in-time synchronization. And this system is a great example of how European strategic autonomy can be a success, because there's an independent positioning system. It's independent of third countries, and there are also leading projects in areas such as agriculture, and there's been digitalization of traditional sectors, and that's all thanks to this. And then secondly, we spoke about the Series 2 satellites which are currently being developed. This is key infrastructure to bolster resilience, interconnections, and our operations using satellites, and that's going to be fully up and running by 2027. And this constellation will mean that member states have safe and secure communications. There'll be global sovereignty, and it will mean that we can protect infrastructure, better manage crises, and we can more successfully implement the global gateway strategy and our digital strategy. Third example, I wanted to speak to you about Copernicus. This is the Earth observation program, which is key if we want to implement the European Green Deal initiatives. It also makes it possible to monitor phenomena such as droughts and fires. In Spain, for example, it helped us to monitor the eruption of the volcano on La Palma. It enables us to keep an eye on climate events, which unfortunately we're seeing are becoming more and more frequent throughout the world, notably in Europe. So the Copernicus data has given us scientific data pertaining to global warming. Therefore, this is key in order to combat climate change deniers, and it's key to help public policymakers to take decisions. So the conclusions of this informal meeting: basically, the Spanish presidency wanted to focus on measures which the EU and its member states need to adopt. Firstly, to ensure continuity and strengthening of space-based services provided by the EU. Secondly, we want to protect our space infrastructure, make it more resilient and competitive. Thirdly, we wanted to discuss improvements to technological autonomy, and we wanted to thereby reduce our strategic dependence throughout the whole value chain in the aerospatial sector. And lastly, last but not least, we wanted to stimulate access to space by incentivizing new European launcher systems. The idea was to have a discussion on possible measures which could be taken to ensure autonomous access to space and to bolster the resilience of space infrastructure in the EU, including replacing constellations and deploying future constellations. European Commissioner for the Internal Market and Services, Thierry Breton, you have the floor.
Bien, merci.
Thank you very much to the Spanish presidency. Thank you to the Minister for her welcome, and to the very rich debates we had this morning on 3 subjects. Firstly, resilience of our infrastructure. Secondly, reducing technological dependency, and thirdly, independent access to space. I'll start with resilience. Through our infrastructure, our spatial infrastructure, and as Madam Minister said, Galileo, Copernicus, and IRIS². We have to better use this infrastructure to develop applications for security and defense. We've been doing this with Galileo, including having the right governance structures as well. And that's what IRIS² aims to do. You may have a military application as well as connectivity. And that's what we're starting to and going to continue to do with the second generation of Copernicus. So from now on, we have to work on bringing together everything that we have for a space surveillance system. That's a key element. We've talked about it already, and we will have opportunities to talk again. Secondly, reducing technological dependency. As you know, together with mapping and technological dependency services, we are reducing our technological dependency. We want to reduce that dependency. That's the center of our economic strategy that we've set up. And space is an important part of this. We will, of course, speak about this. Point 3. It is critical to ensure autonomous access to space. It's been said. We've talked about it a lot. Europe has momentarily lost its autonomous access to space. And as an institution, I deplore this. This is something that's still an open question at ESA. We think that we need to change the way we work on launches. Yesterday, we came to an agreement, but we need to go even further. We need to work on this politically, programmatically, but also in our institutions to be stronger and more European and work on the 4 principles that I mentioned firstly. So first, more competitiveness to meet our programming needs, IRIS², but not only IRIS². Secondly, greater industrial responsibility with technology, including reusable technologies. And reducing geo-return. Thirdly, aggregation of institutional actors. So for all institutional launches, whether that's from the EU, from ESA, or from member states. With that in mind, the Commission has said, I mentioned this morning, we mentioned Article 5 of the space programme, a preference for Europe, not just for the Commission. It should be the case for all member states. In particular, military launches. This is a sine qua non condition of autonomous access to space, because that is how we will ensure commercial viability of our launches. This is what the US does, for example. We want to avoid the European paradox. We want to be autonomous, but so far we've got too many institutions which depend on non-European launches. I'll just go through the 3 points that so that was an overview of the 3 points that we discussed this morning. Thank you.
Okay, questions?
Buenos días.
Hello, I'm Noemi Gomez. I work at the FA agency. A question for both of you. You both said that one of the important points discussed was the need to reduce technological dependence. I wonder whether you could give us an example, perhaps, of an area in which that dependence could be reduced. Perhaps if you could just give us an example of that. And then the Galileo satellites, are any of them going to be launched with SpaceX, the US company? Thank you. Well, when it comes to strategic autonomy, we gave 3 clear examples of how Europe was aiming to and is aiming to achieve the strategic autonomy. One of them is IRIS², which is being developed, and we hope that that will be up and running in 2027. So that is one of the strategic projects. aimed at ensuring European autonomy. There's also Galileo and Copernicus, they were mentioned too. And the Commissioner and I stressed the need, and this was mentioned yesterday actually as well at the ESA meeting, and I'm sure it will be discussed as well in the upcoming meeting, a dialogue between EU and ESA. Basically, we stressed the need of ensuring more autonomy when it comes to launching space systems.
Alors, très rapidement.
Very briefly, perhaps some additional information on what the Minister said very well on giving examples of reducing strategic dependence. With semiconductors is something we're thinking of. That's why we set up our European Chips Act, which means that in Europe we will be able to produce the most advanced microprocessors and the most durable, those for military and space use. We know that there are critical technological dependencies in space which are covered by major investments that we as Europeans have enabled across the whole sector of semiconductors. It's very clear that we've identified these clear risks of dependency, and now we are preserving our strategic autonomy in that area on those components which are essential to space development. As to Galileo, I've talked about as an institutional client, I'm not happy with what's happened, and you'll understand that there should be launches guaranteed. We had a calendar which was promised and which was not kept to, and because this calendar was not kept to, there was a very good rocket which we were waiting for and really needed, but there were delays again and again. And because of these delays, we had to make certain decisions because we're responsible in an operational sense for the Galileo constellations. Yes, we have 4 satellites to launch next year. And given that Ariane 6 is still not going to be available, apparently, I accepted a proposal from ESA to use SpaceX. We're still finalizing the discussions. But in order to do that, we need secure access. We're talking about very critical satellites, and so we're still negotiating with the American side. And once that's been finalized, yes, we will have 2 launches for 4 satellites, which will be carried out by SpaceX.
Hi, thank you. Josh Pisano from Politico. Just a quick follow-up question to my colleague on the subject of the SpaceX launches. Do you know when a contract will be signed and when those 2 launches could take place next year, Mr. Breton? And also specifically on the IRIS² constellation, when will you sign the contracts for that, and when would we expect first services from whatever constellation is finally built? Thanks.
Alors, sur IRIS², donc comme...
On IRIS², as you know, we are currently finishing our consultations on that. I hope that we'll be ready by the end of the year, and that we can then sign the whole thing at the start of next year. So things are going according to schedule. Everything is going to plan according to our expectations. So we're currently in a stage of competitive dialogue, and I can't say any more about that, but we are sticking to the schedule, or is going to plan. As to your first question, the ESA proposal, which I accepted for 2 launches, so that we can bridge the gap of availability today and expected availability in the future of Ariane 6. So the contract was signed in July. There are still authorizations pending, subject to our agreement with the American authorities. So when that's been finalized, the 2 launches should take place in April and July, subject to confirmation, but I'm giving you indicative dates.
Si no hay más preguntas.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I think that brings our press conference to an end. Thank you very much.